Hi Fantasy Grounds fans, we're back again to take a look at story templates and all the functionality that is now baked into Fantasy Grounds. If you are looking for something specific to do within story templates, check in the video description below. There should be time codes down there so you can jump to whatever it is that you want a refresher on or learn more about. And on this video tutorial, it's going to be a little longer because we're going to start in the PowerPoint here, and we're going to jump between here and actual Fantasy Grounds to show implementation of these features. So let's get right into it. First thing I want to cover is a little bit of terminology between a callout and a reference. So a callout is what I'm going to call anything that you are bringing out of a table for the first time. It's the first time that you're reaching into that table and getting data. That's a callout. A reference is going to be any time you're looking back at something that you already called out before and putting it in again. So they get a little bit murky when you talk about call out internal references, but we'll get into that as well. So here we are, we're rolling new results. Don't worry about all that syntax down underneath. We're going to go over each one of these, but those are all examples of call outs. New data from a table and referencing, bringing something you've called before back. And those are callout internal references. That's where we stick references inside of callouts. They're still technically callouts. We're just using reference to determine what new data we're pulling. So this is everything we're going to cover. Here's our overview of everything. And like I said, in the video description below, you'll find time codes that will take you directly to each of these as we go through them. The first things we're going to cover are going to be standard usage, and this is the easiest way to use story templates and make some quick things with table callouts, columns, and references. So for this example, we're going to use a table called A. The table is A. It's got 4 columns of data called column 1, 2, 3, and 4. Call 1, call 2, call 3, and call 4. If you use a table callout with the square brackets, it will give you everything from the row, all 4 columns, at once. If you reference it with the alligator mouth or greater than less than symbols, whatever, I like alligator brackets because they look like a little chompy alligator mouth, and you reference it, you'll get the same thing that you got before. You can also do a column callout where you use the pipe symbol to specify one column of that table that you want. And so it'll get the row, it'll roll the row, but it'll just go to that column and give you column 3. And if you referenced it later with the alligator mouth, you would only get column 3 before. So this is the standard usage of story templates, and this is the easiest way to use it. Call tables, reference them, and build a story with it. The problem was, and this is where we get into some of our more advanced features, when you use this standard column callout or the standard table callout, you either get everything or you just get column 3 from row whatever, row 15. And so column 3 won't have any relation to anything else that you've rolled as a result. So this is where we get into the advanced features, and we'll take a look at column referencing. So we'll jump in the PowerPoint real quick, and I'll run through it, and then we'll jump over to Fantasy Grounds and take a look at what that looks like when the rubber hits the road. So once again, table A. We've got 4 columns of data. So we've got a table callout of A and a column reference here. So we get table A, we get column 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, it's going to take that data and it's going to store it for us, and we can then reference it with the hashtag or the waffle or the pound sign, right? I'll call it hashtag. We're going to reference it and use the hashtag, the table name, a pipe symbol, whatever column we wanted from our previous result, because we're referencing, right? And then it'll give us column 3. If we wanted column 4, it'll pull from the same things we rolled before to give us column 4, and that's super powerful. So let's see why. Here we've got table A, gnome is in column 1, female, gribbles, and she in the different columns. So if we were going to use this with just a standard table callout, first of all, we wouldn't use this table for this application, but bear with me because I'm going to illustrate a point here. We would get the silhouette of a gnome, female, gribble, she appeared in the tavern doorway, right? Which that's not what we want. It would vomit that all out. You could use multiple tables. And this is what we do now, or what we did before we have these new features, where you would use a separate table for race that would have gnome in it, presumably. You would have a pronoun table for she or he. You would have a random name table. You could reference pronoun down at the bottom. And what you would get is possibly the silhouette of a elf appears in the tavern. Notice that a and elf, that indefinite article of a, it should be an elf. We'll get into that later on how we can do that. What we got here is we got an elf that has the pronoun of she and the name of Frank, which doesn't match. It's not what we're looking for. So we can get into column references. Here what we're doing is we rolled on table A, presumably before. Now we're going to reference what we got. So here we're going to use hashtag A pipe symbol 1. So column 1 of what we rolled before. Down here, column 4 of what we rolled before. Column 3, column 4, column 4. And when that printed out, we would have the silhouette of a gnome, she, and her name is Gribbles, as she says, as she motions for the bartender. Once again, something I wanted to point out. Notice that this first she is capitalized, and then the she's that come later are not. That's another feature that we have that we'll get into later, auto-capitalization. This column 4 does not really represent the right way to do column or auto-capitalization. It would have parentheses around the S here to tell it to look and see if it needed to be capitalized, but we'll get into that. So the thing is, in order to populate this, we'd have to roll on table A somewhere first. But you don't want gnome, female, Gribbles, she vomited somewhere in your story, so you hide that. You roll on it, you store it, and you hide it. We're going to jump around a little bit to hidden roles, but before we do, let me go back. We're going to stick with column referencing, and we're going to jump over to Fantasy Grounds to take a look at what it looks like for column referencing. So let's scroll up to the top of here. Column referencing. Okay. So here we have column referencing. This is just to show you the syntax. You'll see what happens when this doesn't point to anything in a moment. We're going to roll on NPC, any race, any gender. This is a large table, a very large table, in fact, which I can show here. Now, I have an ultra-wide screen, so when I'm not, I have the UI scaled up quite a bit here so you can read it easier. But this normally fits on my screen. So there's our NPC, any gender. We're going to roll on that table. It's going to vomit out everything because we're not hiding it. Regular reference, this is if we alligator reference it. It'll just reprint this. And then we're going to do a column reference. Hashtag, NPC, any race, any gender. We want column 3 only and a hashtag symbol. We're going to do an example and I'll show you. So let's go ahead and generate this. Let's go down past custom naming. Here we go. So column referencing. Notice it has no data in column 3. Well, that's because it's looking at this reference here. And this is not pointing to anything. This is just to show you. So if you do something wrong, or you point to a wrong table, it will give you an error message that there's no data in column 3. And you can go take a look at what happened. Anyways, we rolled a standard callout for NPC, any race, any gender. It's got 30 columns, so it vomited it all out here. Right? We got Silver Dragonborn, male, his name, his nickname, bunch of stuff, right? Then we regular reference with the alligator bracket. So that's what comes up here. Regular reference, and it just puts the same thing. It referenced all that vomited stuff. Here's where column reference comes in. So NPC, any race, any gender, pipe symbol 3, surrounded by the hashtag symbols. We said we just want column 3 of what we rolled before. We got Iajad. Well, that's his name, Iajad, from column 3. Here we've got column 1 was Silver Dragonborn. Column 2 was male. Column 3 was Iajad. His last name is Prex, Dragonborn name. Here's an example of usage. So as you see over here in our template, we've got NPC, any race, any gender, column 6. Then we say column 13. Then column 21. Column 22. And when that prints out, we've created this paragraph. He has pitch black eyes, clothes decorated in silver and bright orange, and is a hunchback. He's also sporting curly hair, which is strawberry blonde on one side and copper on the other, styled with a military cut. So in this way, we can generate everything for this NPC and then put it into paragraphs where it makes sense, and then reference it all over the place. So custom named example, we'll get into that in a minute. Let's take a look at the hidden feature real fast. All right. That's supposed to go over hidden roles. Things happen. Hidden feature. So normally you call out a table, it vomits everything out. But if you put a question mark in the beginning of your call out, it won't print anything. But it's still rolled on everything, and you can still reference those columns. So let's take a look in Fantasy Grounds at what that looks like with column referencing and hiding things. And here we have it, custom named example. Let me scroll up. Oh, this is custom naming. Okay, so I can show you right here. We'll just do it. We'll throw a question mark at the beginning of this row, column referencing. And it comes above regular reference here, right? So generate. So it hit it. Nothing showed up here. Now, when we use that with custom naming, and I'll pull that up in a minute. We'll get to hidden. But basically, let me pull over to here, reshow this. It's going to store things, and you don't have to vomit all of those things back in. So here it says, just like we did, let's say you have a table named NPC. It's got 30 columns. You don't want it all. You put the question mark, and then you can column reference them. It won't print NPC table with all 30 things, but it stores them, so you can column reference them. So the question mark is hidden feature. That applies to almost every callout that we have. In fact, every callout that we have, you can use the hidden feature for. And these are an example of them. Callout internal rolling, as well as cross-template callouts, the question mark at the beginning. Just before the table name is where the question mark goes. And then you're telling Fantasy Grounds, don't show what I'm pulling, the new data that I'm pulling. Link referencing text options. Okay, this is a brand new thing, and this is one of the reasons, one of the impetus behind making this new video, is that now we can column reference and store link records. That's image records, NPCs, tables that you can use the links for, story entries. Anything can be now column stored and retrieved. So let's take a look in here. So why are there text options, and what does that mean? All right, so let's say we've got nested tables. Okay, table A is our top level table, and inside of it we've taken table B and dropped it with some link text. Okay, so they're nested like this. All right, table A being the top table. And when you roll on this, let's say in your template you rolled on table A, Fantasy Grounds will go all the way down to the bottom, and it'll drag up table E's results all the way through table D, through table 3, through table B, through table A to give you your output. And your output, if you did it this way, would look like this. You would get the image, the link image down in the bottom. You'd get that first. You'd get a shield link record with the text that went with that image. But the rest of them were tables. So then it would vomit out all the text that was sitting next to the links in the tables in reverse order because it drags them through. Table 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. So your output to story would give you your image, and then it would give you a bunch of text that says link table text 4, link table text 3, link table text 2, link table text 1, right? Now there's ways to mitigate that. You could just get rid of all the text next to the links in the nested tables. And that works. It would drag it all the way up, and it would give you just your image link with the text next to it. But when you're managing tables, and this can get unwieldy, you can have tables just full of links, tons of links. And if you remove all the text off of them, that's kind of a nightmare to manage and figure out what's going on. So it's not ideal to just remove all the text. I'll tell you, it can be ideal to use tables in this way with the links. Because if you later change the name of the table that you've linked here, if you use a link instead of square brackets in your tables, it doesn't care about name changes. It's still pointing to that table record, no matter what the name changes to. So it can be beneficial to use table links in this way. But keeping the text is really handy for table management. So this is not ideal, just removing all the text. So that's why we have these link referencing text options. I don't know what that was. And these are them. Okay, so these are the commands you can use within your tables next to the links in the text area of the entry. Hide before, hide after, and hide all. Hide before will hide all link text appearing before the link item in the roll chain, including this one's. Hide after hides it after, and hide all hides it all. This will get real simple to see what I'm talking about in just a second, right? This is how you would use it inside your table. So you'd have your link, you would have your image text, and you would use your command there with the pipe symbols and hide before, hide after, or hide all. They are not case sensitive. So here we are again with our nested tables. But here on table C, I have put my command hide before in with the text. And so this is what it would output. It would come through, it finds hide before, okay. So it's going to hide any linked table text on the one that I put the command and earlier in the chain, 2 or 1. And this is what you would get. You would get your link with table E's link image text next to it, and then it would print out link table text 4 from table D, because you wanted that, presumably. That's why you used hide before. So hide before hides the one you put it on and everything before it in the list of tables as they drill down. Hide after does the opposite. So if you used hide after here, it would show you your final link that you got for your image and its text, and it would show you the text from table A and table B, but it hides anything table C and beyond, hide after. And if you used hide all, you would get the exact output as if you had deleted all the table text. It would come up, find hide all, and it would only give you your final record with your text. The reason why I felt this was necessary to implement is there's so many use cases out there that sometimes you might want certain table link text next to them in order to build your tables, and sometimes you don't. So this just adds flexibility to the table creator to say how do they want their text to display. And I do have in Fantasy Grounds, so we'll jump over to that, an example of this. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And link, here we go. So let's take a look at these tables real fast. I've got table A, just like in our example, table B, table C, table D, table E, and table E has our city map here. City map is an image record. So I've got hide all here. We're just going to get rid of all of that hide all so that we can do a test, and I can show you how it works. There we go. All right, so let's pull up a template. Here we have a template. We're going to roll on table A. We're going to custom name it as test. We'll get into custom naming in a little bit, but suffice it to say, this is what we get. So, just as I said, we got our link record, our image record for city map. There's our image record for city map. And then it spit out table E, D, C, and B. So, and that's maybe not what I want. So let's go ahead and change our table. Let's go to table C, put back in our thing. Let's just go in order here. Let's go hide before. Okay, and we generate. So it hid, all we got was table E, the text that was in table D, because we linked here to table E. So it hid everything before table C and just showed us table E. So let's switch that up. Let's say hide after. Let me make sure that I'm showing you what you need to see in the video. Yeah, okay, great. Yes, okay, good. Hide after. All right, so here we go. Generate. Here, it hid everything after. So we got the text in table A and table B, but everything beyond was hid. And if I do hide all, and we generate, all we get is our final image record and its text associated. So that's how these work. Let me go ahead and close these out now. You just put them as I showed. Do that. You just put that command anywhere next to your link that you're rolling on in the text, and it will find it. And once it sees it, it'll act accordingly to what it should. So that is link referencing text options and how they work. So let's head back over to our PowerPoint. And let's take a look at now callout custom naming. Callout custom naming is both really handy and necessary for a lot of different reasons. Let's take a look at what it is. Okay, so when you use a standard callout called color with the square brackets, it's going to store it, even if you call it multiple times, in the same bucket, so that when you reference it later with the alligator brackets, you get everything that you called before at once. And you never want that, right? So now you can custom name it. So here I'm rolling on color. I'm putting it in a bucket I'm calling eyes. A custom name I'm calling eyes. I'm rolling on color again. I'm putting it in a custom name I'm calling teeth. Later I can just reference my custom name, eyes, and I get blue. So this is super powerful and really good to use. The syntax here, as you can see, is we've got our square brackets. We enclose our table name in colons, and then our custom name comes last. So there's no internal brackets around that. That would be an internal callout. So we'll get into that later as well. So this is how callout custom naming works. It allows you, now I don't have to make a separate table for a spy NPC, then another table for a bartender NPC. I've got one table called NPC. I can use it 100 different times for 100 different NPCs and just name them. This also becomes really easy when you're writing stories, because then you can just reference Jester column 6 or whatever. And it makes it a lot easier to understand what's going on. Here I'm using the hidden feature. So I've got a question mark for NPC. For bad guy, it's not going to print anything. It's going to roll on that 30 column table for NPC, not print anything. And then I can reference it. Bad guy number 2, his name was Jimmy, because that was in column 2 of NPC. So let's take a look over at Fantasy Grounds and how this works. Let's go up to the top. Call out custom naming. And here's the syntax here. So what we're going to roll on is we're going to roll on tavern name test. It's going to give us a random tavern name, okay, just to show what the table kind of outputs. Then we're going to custom name it twice. We're going to do the same table, tavern name test. We're going to custom name that main tavern. We'll roll on tavern name test again. We'll roll on, we'll call that rival tavern, and then we can reference those. Let's go ahead and generate and see what we come up with. So here we just rolled on it standard. We got the Cleaver Flophouse. So it's putting out a tavern name, right? Here we rolled on it with our custom named, enclosing the table name in colons. The main tavern one, we got Ye Old Fool Robber Place. And the rival tavern is Ye Old Troll and Silver's Outhouse. Okay, when we then reference them, main tavern and rival tavern, you can see that it knew what to look for. We called that one main tavern. We got the robber place. We called this one rival, or main and rival, and we got Silver's Outhouse here. That's how custom naming works. So custom naming, like I said, very powerful, used constantly, and it is necessary for other callouts, because sometimes you don't even know what table is going to be rolled on if you're using callout internal referencing or internal callouts. You don't even know what table is going to be rolled on, so you have to use a custom name in order to reference it later. And you'll see why in just a moment. So let's head back over to our PowerPoint. Let's take a look at callout internal rolling. So this is one of those things, one of those use cases where you won't know what table is going to be rolled on. So how could you reference it later? You couldn't without a custom name. All right. So this is how traditionally you nest tables and how things are done, right? Or how you get deterministic with your tables. You would have a race table. Inside race, you would have gender. Inside gender table, you would have a table for name, right? And it would roll down just like the hierarchy before to find that name and drag it back to the top. So that, as it says here, it works. But if you alligator reference race later, you're referencing a table that doesn't say name, which can get confusing. You're referencing race to get a name, okay? But if in the name table at the very end you had first and last names, maybe in 2 columns, you can't separate them. You're always going to get first and last names. Likewise, if in race you have elf, and in gender you have male, and in name you have Bobby Boucher, right? Then every time you reference race, you're going to get elf male Bobby Boucher. Right? Which isn't good when you're trying to have NPCs talk to one another or say things. You don't want to say, hey, elf male Bobby Boucher. You don't want that, right? So now you can custom name it, and call out internal rolling. So I can roll on a table inside of a table name to determine what table to roll on, as you see down here. So we got our colons for custom naming. We're going to roll on race. We're going to roll on gender, and I've typed the word name here. So what this is going to roll on is maybe elf male name or elf female name or dwarf female name. It's going to roll, and then it will, whatever table results there, that's the table it will roll on, and we'll store it in bartender. So using callout internal rolling, then we can roll on each column of the resulting name table individually. So bartender 1, bartender 2, right, will give us the first and last name, Bobby or Boucher, but alligator referencing will give us Bobby Boucher, right? So that's how it's different. It's easier to use and to make tables for and everything like that. It comes in handy in a lot of different ways. But this is why custom naming is also so important. We had no idea what it might roll on there. So if we have this syntax here, we have no idea what table it will roll on. So we have to give it a bucket so that we can then reference it later. It works with the hidden feature. So if we put that question mark in here, none of that will show up, but we called it spy, and we can roll on spy later. So that's callout custom naming. Or sorry, internal rolling. Do I have something in Fantasy Grounds to show that off? Honestly, I don't know. Let's take a look. I do. Callout internal rolling. Fantastic. Okay, so here we're using table results to determine our final table. So our settlement is called. So here I've got race test 3. I'm inside of square brackets here, and I put a colon. So this is will be my table name. My table name will be determined by the outcome of the rolling on race test 3 and village test, and then it will put name on there. It'll roll on that table, and I'm storing it in settlement. Hereafter, we can refer to that with our custom name of settlement. Okay, so let's take a look at what rolled. Callout internal rolling. Our settlement is called Fire Summit. Hereafter, we can refer to it with the brackets here. You see it came up with Fire Summit because we custom named it settlement on our callout internal rolling. And then we can reference those internal callouts. So notice we had rolled on race test 3 in order to determine what race this settlement name was going to be. Well, that's a roll. We can reference race test 3 if we want. So as an example, the settlement above is, and here we're referencing race test 3, right? So in our resulting story, as an example, the settlement above is a dwarf settlement. So that happened inside of this table callout, but we can reference it just like normal. So Fire Summit is a dwarf settlement because on race test 3 it rolled dwarf. Village test is just a table to show more of this. Village test just has the word village in it so that it made it simple for me to show you what's going on. But race test 3 has all 3 main races in my current campaign: elf, dwarf, and human. So that's how that works. In fact, let me roll on it again, and we'll go down to callout internal rolling. We got Brittle Valley because it's a human settlement. So here we rolled human, and it gave us, it rolled, instead of dwarf village name, it rolled on human village name. That is callout internal rolling. All right. Next on our list, callout internal referencing and callout internal column referencing. Important to note that these are technically callouts. They have references in them, but you're pulling new data, okay? So let's take a look at this. This is how we would use it. You stumble upon and here we're using a regular callout for race settlement. The mayor, an old alligator reference, we're going to reference what we rolled on race, an old race named, and here we're going to use a reference to determine what table that we're going to roll. So here I've got race name, right? So if he comes up dwarf, then it will stick dwarf inside those square brackets and roll on dwarf name. So the mayor, an old dwarf named Britkoff Stonefist, greets you. That's how callout internal referencing works. It also works with column references. So we can use the hashtags on a column. Let's say it gets elf name, and we would get elf name there. We'd be able to put that in. You can mix them. So alligator references, go back please, previous. Alligator references mixed with column references might give you human female name. So that's how those work. These work with the hidden feature as well, so you can put a question mark in there, and you can custom name them as well, because they are callouts. So let's take a look over in Fantasy Grounds. Call out internal referencing. Let's just go ahead and generate. Okay. And roll down to call out internal referencing. There we are. All right. So here we are going to, let's see, we're going to name it as main race. Okay. So race test 4, we custom named it main race. Okay, race test 4 is it's a table that has 3 races on it: elf, human, dwarf. Okay, we custom named it main race. What did we get? We get human. Okay, we can take that main race and we can stick it in to a table callout to determine what table to roll on. So main race village name. So we got human, it stuck that in there, and it gave us old branch. Notice I then reference main race here. So we get old branch, a human village. Something just to, if you're keen and you see something interesting here, this A is surrounded by parentheses. That is indefinite article processing, and we'll get into that soon. But what that has done, notice the parentheses are gone in my result. It took a look to see what the next word was and look at rules to see if that should be the letter A or the word an. Because if it was elf, it would be more appropriate to have an elf village. So we'll get into that here soon. Call out internal column referencing as well. So we just talked about that. They are interchangeable. We're going to roll on a table with multiple columns. NPC, main, any race, any gender. We're going to call it mayor. I put a question mark here, so we hit it. Notice over here, nothing rolled, or nothing showed. It all rolled, but nothing was printed. We'll use the first column of the huge table to populate which race the village should be. So we're using the first column of mayor 1, right? Or of mayor, column 1. So mayor, column 1, village name. And this is what we got. Snakebell, that's the village name, which is a human village because the female named Therese Hensley is a human. So we're using a lot of things here. I'm taking the column reference and putting it in for internal column referencing, call out internal column referencing to get the village name. Then we're using an indefinite article processor here before the race because it could be elf. We don't know. We're column referencing there, another indefinite article process and column referencing there to get this sentence which comes out. We talked about hidden roles before. I have this example. I don't want to regress, but here's an example where we rolled on hat color and hit it, and the reference gives us turquoise. So, interesting thing with hidden roles. I hate to jump around like this because of the video time codes down at the bottom. But here, when you custom name something, this is something I found out later, it doesn't have to be a table name. It could be a phrase. You could literally just type a string, a phrase in here. It will store it in promo. So I hid it here with the question mark. The phrase was stored and hidden. But if I reference promo later, I will get it. So I put Fantasy Grounds kicks butt. I stored it in promo. That's not a table. Fantasy Grounds kicks butt is just something I typed. And then when I referenced it, it stored what I wrote, and it can pull it back out. I'm sure there's use cases for that. I haven't used it yet. It was kind of a side benefit, but if you stuck with the video and you didn't just go straight to hidden roles on the time code, now you know something a little extra that wasn't planned in the video per se. All right, so let's take a look back here. Date calls with formatting. All right, so this has changed a little bit, and it's way better now. All right, so this is how they work. It's looking for a table callout with a table name of date or FG date. So pro tip, don't name any of your tables date or FG date because that's going to be very confusing for Fantasy Grounds. It's looking for these specifically. So inside our brackets, we have date, then our colon, and then a space for your format. Okay, so date is going to call from your computer system clock. FG date is going to call from the Fantasy Grounds calendar. Big update, you can now use fantasy calendars. As long as you have a calendar mod loaded in Fantasy Grounds, you can use a fantasy calendar with FG date. So now, the format area, you can type almost anything you want in there. There are some characters that Fantasy Grounds, just Unity, doesn't like. For instance, I believe a dash character it's not super friendly with, but shouldn't be a big issue. Most characters will be fine. and it will swap it out for the values. So here's our formats. It's looking within that format section for these specific things. 4Ys, 2Ys. So if the date here, if we're assuming it's November 2nd, 1984, it would look, and if it found 4Ys, it would replace those 4Ys with 1984. And we've got 2 different ways to show year, 3 different ways to show month. Note that the 3 M's for the abbreviation of NOV in November only works with the Gregorian calendar, and that only makes common sense because when you're using fantasy calendars, there's no baked-in code for what the abbreviations of the month would be. So this only works with Gregorian. 3 different ways to show the day. There is a new call out for epoch, for instance BC or AD, and that's something you can add to your fantasy calendar as well. You can add one of these suffixes to a date, and you can reference that. And old school. Old school only works with FG date, with date, the system clock. It doesn't work with fantasy calendars, but it's looking specifically for these. 4Ys, lowercase, lowercase, everything lowercase. That's what it's looking for. And yeah, to show you just real quick, because it seems like you might have been looking at that the whole time. Here we go. So I typed in here, this is my date format, month and day, and this is what resulted. This is my date format, July and Friday. So you can type anything you like in here, and you can make up your own formats, and it'll be fine. And then here's the Fantasy Grounds dates. So I have loaded currently the fantasy calendar for tier, I think it is. I've typed in an era, XO, and a year, 407. So I've got a fantasy calendar, and here's the Fantasy Grounds dates. 3-day, so day, month, day. Notice that MMM gave me Feb because that's only Gregorian, right? Let's change that to month. There we go. Yes, so generate, and let's go down to fantasy dates, date calls. So there we go. 3-day, Scorch, 15, because that's my fantasy. Or 2 of 407, or Scorch, the year 407. Scorch, 3-day. So it works with fantasy calendars now as well. All right. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Cross-template referencing. This is the most powerful thing that we have now that we can use. And I'll show you why. All right, so once again, we're going back to our example table A with 4 columns of data. 1 story template over here. I'm going to do a cross-template callout in it. Those are done with the squiggly brackets. So I have the table A enclosed in its colons, that's where the table is, and a custom name of B. It's going to go ahead and print all that. We can hide it as well with a question mark, but it's going to print all that in our template that we use. But it's going to store it all somewhere safe and far away where we can reference it from other templates. So now we have story template 2. And I'm going to reference it. Notice that now it's B. I custom named it B. So when I reference it B. A reference, just like alligator brackets, right? We're using the squiggly braces, no colons, no nothing. We're just using the name, the custom name we put it in. And it will give us all 4 columns. We can also column reference that. So here we're going to use our hashtags and our pipe symbol. We want to cross-template reference B, column 4. And we will get what we rolled before and get column 4. Super huge, right? It works with hidden. Put that question mark in there. And yeah, you can nest it deep in tables to pull that out. It's huge. So let's take a look at how we can use this, right? So this is within the parent story template. We're going to roll on NPC. We're going to hide it. We're going to call it stranger. And we'll go ahead and reference that with the squiggly brackets. So this is in the first template. Ahead of you, a stranger, column 1, walks into a tavern. And a totally different story template, we can use the same references. The silhouette of a stranger 1 appeared, and we can pull all that stuff from the previous one. So this is what we got in our parent story template. The gnome walked in, and in the other one, we got all the stuff about Gribbles in a completely different story template because we stored it far away. Let's take a look at that in Fantasy Grounds. Let's get rid of all these. Okay. Cross-template referencing. All right, so let's take a look. What's going to happen here? We roll a full NPC. Let's do it. Now let's scroll down to cross-template referencing. Here we go. We rolled a full NPC. We got Elf Male Servar Hybrook, the bear. Okay? we're going to take that. Now notice down here, I've got 2 story templates. One of them, right here in this template, I used the cross-template reference to grab, we called him Tavern Owner Test, by the way. That's the bucket we put it in, the custom name. We're going to call column 3, and if you see here, we got Sirvar's Bar, right? So we did a column reference from this role to get Sirvar in order to put it here. So Sirvar's Bar. So we used it in the same template that we did. But now we're going to do a different template over here. Cross-template test. The tavern owner is, we're using tavern owner test. That's what we stored it in this one. And we're referencing, and we generate. The tavern owner is Sirvar Highbrook. And everything about Sirvar was pulled from what we rolled previously. And so here we've got the templates talking to each other and able to share data between them, which is unbelievably powerful and can be used in some very creative, high-level ways. So yeah, that is cross-template referencing. Next thing we've got is indefinite article processing. Okay, so that's a or an. Which one should it be? What you do is whatever it is, if you're not sure, if a table's coming after your indefinite article, you're not sure if it's going to come up with a vowel word or not a vowel word, a consonant word, then you wrap it in parentheses and forget about it and let Fantasy Grounds figure out what it should be. So here we wrapped our capital A in parentheses and a lowercase a. We rolled on animal twice, and it looked at it and said, oh, octopus? Well, that shouldn't have a octopus. It should be an octopus, and it changed a out for an. But then when animal rolled again, it came up walrus, and it says that should stay a. So this is it kind of intelligently looking at what it should be and replacing it with what makes the most literary sense. Here we've got a seal ran away from an eagle. So that's just simply done with the parentheses around a or a. And you use whichever one. You use a capital if it's supposed to be capital, or a lowercase if it's supposed to be lowercase. It will keep that case, whatever you put in, right? So you just wrap it in parentheses and then let Fantasy Grounds do the rest. That's indefinite article processing. Let's take a look in Fantasy Grounds. Here we've got, notice I've wrapped the A's in their parentheses before a table for NPC animal. Let's see what we did here. All consonant ones. Of course, why would it roll on one for this? Let's roll it again. See if we get one that has... There we go. We got one out of all these. A crow, a badger, a lion. It looked at those and says, well, that should just stay A. But when we got down here, we rolled eagle. And it said, oh, that shouldn't be A. That should be an eagle. An eagle. And if it would have rolled eagle up here too, it would have done the same thing with the lowercase. This has exceptions. So here we've got a uterus, a heir, a unilateral agreement, right? And it knows which ones should be a or an. A uterus should not be an heir, a unilateral agreement. So these are exceptions to the rules. It has a lengthy list of exceptions, trying to be smart about what should be which indefinite article. So hopefully that explains that sufficiently. Now let's jump over to intelligent auto-capitalization. This also uses the parentheses, but you put it around the first word in your or the first letter in your word. So let's say you've got an NPC table and you have pronouns in there. He, she, his, and her. Lots of times those will begin a sentence. And so it's nice if it will just auto-capitalize that if it does begin a sentence. So here on column 3, I've put parentheses around the first letter of he, and in column 4 around his. The wind hurt, and we're pulling column 4, then column 3, and column 4, right? Notice that some of these start a sentence, and some don't. This is what we would get. The wind hurt his eyes, not capitalized, middle of a sentence. But here when we called column 3, it looked and said, there's punctuation here, and it capitalized he. He covered them up with his hands, lowercase again, but this time, when it rolled on column 4, it's after some punctuation, so it capitalized his. Just makes it easier to read, makes your stories look more professional and so it's nice. It works only if it follows punctuation of some kind, right? So, however, we did just do some tweaks because it should also auto-capitalize if it's the very beginning of a new line. A little tricky to get that dialed in, but I think we've got it. And if we don't, we will soon. So that is intelligent auto-capitalization. And let's take a look in Fantasy Grounds. Here we are. Auto-capitalization. All right, so Mayor 3 is the mayor. They look easy because they know what they're doing, right? Let's take a look at, now Mayor 3 was NPC, any race, any gender, right? So you see here on column 6 and column 7, I've wrapped these in parentheses, he, his, she, and her, okay? So that's where it's pulling those results and then taking a look if they should be capitalized or not. Flomic is the mayor. She came after punctuation, so capitalized. Makes it look easy because she, not capitalized, knows what she is doing, also not capitalized. The next one comes after punctuation. She really loves her job, and it is capitalized. Very simple to do. In that table, I just wrapped the very first letter of that word in parentheses, and Fantasy Grounds does the rest. Takes a look and sees if there's a punctuation or if it's the beginning of the line, and then capitalizes it as such. The last thing here is column limit increase, like you saw with my giant NPC table. It is, like I said, I've got the UI scaled up here quite a bit so that you can see these things easier. Normally this giant table does fit on my screen, but 30 tables. And that is a huge deal when you have access to column referencing. Because, so here's a quick picture of that. When you have access to column referencing, and now if we get row 3, now I can cherry pick what data I want on row 3. You'll find that having as many columns as possible is very, very helpful to really fleshing out these tables. It just gives you a lot more leeway to do these things. And that, my friends, is story templates. And hopefully you're able to learn how story templates works and see how it looks when it gets into Fantasy Grounds through this video. If not, hit the forums up, ask questions. There's plenty of people monitoring that, and we can help you with your use case or help you figure out how something should work. Bear in mind, there are a lot of features here, and they're designed for ease of use with the simple callouts and references, and so those are very easy to use. When you start getting into super advanced usages of these new powers, you'll find sometimes that it gets very complex and complicated. So if something's not working like you think that it should, do some error checking in Fantasy Grounds. Pull up a template, grab a section of your template you're trying to work on, and work on it there in a smaller version of your template. I find that helps a lot. And when in doubt, ask for help. Thanks for sticking with it and learning about story templates. They're incredibly powerful now, and I can't wait to see what the community does with all these new abilities and the cool new things that are going to come out for everybody to use. Thanks.